Hey, 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 there you are. I see you and you see me and we're together and that's amazing. All right. So enough with the greetings and salutations. Let me check something really quickly. Yeah, I like the way it looks. Let's get into this conversation, shall we? So finally, I'm going to talk to you about me quitting my job for no reason, none whatsoever. And I'm sure some of you are going, wait a minute, what do you mean you quit your job for no reason? Unbeknownst to many people in my life, I was a professor for 11 years. That's not the part that they didn't know. The part that they didn't know is that I quit my job in August of 2021. What? So if you're coming in, let me know how you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being meh, 10 being woo, 5 being, hey, I'm breathing and it's okay. Drop me a number in the comments and just say, hello, hi. So anyway, that being said, or you can just continue to watch silently and know that I see you and I'm super glad that you're here. All right. So in August, I quit my job, my good job, professoring, as I called it, something that I had wanted to do for a really long time. Honestly, I love to teach, if you can't tell. I love to teach. I love to impart wisdom. I love to share. I'm one of those people that when I find something that works for me, that I want to go learn more about it so that I can teach others. I feel like it's not fair for me to just teach from a perspective of this is what I did and you can do it too. I want to know how it works and how I can help people that may have varying degrees of whatever situation. And so I go and I study. This is why I have so many coaching certifications, not because I think certifications make you a coach, because I have my own certification program, but it's cleverly disguised as a business class. Yeah, business and marketing school for coaches. Nevertheless, I have so many certifications because when I find something that I feel like is powerful, I want to learn about it. If there's a certification available, great. I'll go get certified in it, and then I can share with others. That for me is empowering. And so when it came to quitting my job, being the good professor, the good college professor, it was a lot. And here goes my nose again. I literally just sat down, got up, blew my nose the whole night, and now it's back. Wait a minute. Okay, let's hope that's the last time. Okay, all right. And as a child, I was not allowed to have sniffles, right? So the minute I started doing the whole, my mother would say, "Do you need to blow your nose?" And I would say, "No," like kids do, because you know how kids are about blowing their nose. Anyway, if you're looking at the bottom, make sure you also join me on IG because there's always daily content there as well. Stephanie D. McKenzie. Pretty much, I think I'm Stephanie D. McKenzie everywhere because Stephanie McKenzie is a white girl in Canada, which is obviously not me. All right. So that being said, if you're looking for me anywhere, just put Stephanie D. McKenzie in and I shall appear as your personal genie. All right, guys. So let's get into this because I think there's a few things that people need to experience through my experience. And that's why I'm finally sharing it in its entirety. I've kind of shared bits and pieces of it along the way, but I'm going to give you a deeper dive today. All right. Okay. Drop me some comments. At least say hi or hello. Make me happy. Put a smile on my face. It's a really nice smile. Put a smile on my face and let me say hello to you properly. Okay. By all means, if this is your first time being here, welcome. If you are coming back, you're a glutton for punishment, and I'm happy to see you. Make sure you check out our playlist, guys. We have had, listen, my first month on YouTube, I did 48 videos, I think at last count. Literally, you can step flicks and chill. And why I did that is because I saw people who would launch their channels and they would do a weekly video. And I'm like, that's not enough content for me. And plus I have tons of content. And so I wanted to make sure that when someone came to my channel that they could have a robust experience. I think we have definitely achieved that. And I encourage you to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And by our, I mean my team, my editors, my channel manager, my online business manager, my VA, like everybody, we share in this success. And so again, if this is your first time here, thanks. If this is your second time here, great. Check out the playlist. And by all means, if you're liking me thus far, make sure that you like the video, subscribe and tap that bell if you figure out that you want to come back and watch more stuff. Okay. I'm not going to beg you to subscribe, because why? Anyway, make sure you share this out to your circle of influence, because if something was meaningful to you, it might be meaningful to others. Never be stingy with the step. Anyway, back to the history that really impacts this situation. So, oftentimes, and myself included, I was taught that you don't quit a job unless, you have another one, or you're getting a raise, or if you have to. And I'm like, oh, okay. And, I'll be honest with you, that kept me in positions that I didn't want to be in for longer than I should have been. And the truth of the matter is, up until I want to say I became a professor, my longest time at a job was probably about a year and a half. And even that sometimes was too long, because I'm the type of person, I want to be challenged when I'm in a position. When I get to the place where I'm like, this doesn't motivate me anymore, I don't want to do it. Like, I just really, truly don't. And I think some of us can relate to that as it relates not just to work, but also in our personal lives. But I won't go there. All right. Okay. Let me get rid of that. Boom. All right. So in that, you're taught. Okay. I was taught. You get another job, then you leave your job. You get a better job, or you get a raise at the job, and then you can leave the job that you have because you're doing a lateral move, whatever. All of this stuff. And in that, the challenge becomes, okay, well, this is all I know in order to leave a job. So you're sitting there saying, man, I'm miserable at this position, but I don't have another job. Because in being miserable in the work that you're doing, you really don't have the oomph to go out and look for another position. If you've ever had that experience, guys, drop that and just say yeah in the comments, like you get it. Because I know that I've been in a position. Listen, when I worked for a particular nonprofit that shall remain nameless, but they sell cookies, and that's all I have to say about that. If you catch it, good. If you don't, okay. At some point, I was just miserable doing that job. And it wasn't because I didn't like the people. I love the people. But there was a lot of travel involved in my job. And I was like, listen, the time that I went down the highway and I was like being followed by someone with a Confederate flag on the back of their truck, that was pretty much my swan song. Okay. And I honestly did not know what was going to happen next. Crazy thing happened in that instance. I went and got, oh yeah, that's a good one. So I had a job. So I moved on at some point. I think I went to work for another nonprofit. Okay, people, as an Aquarius, I am one of those people who believed in the beginning of my career that I'll go work for nonprofits and I can impact the world. Listen, when you work for a nonprofit, the truth is that oftentimes you're the one that's nonprofit. Sorry, not sorry. So I skipped to another nonprofit, and it was cool, but we won't even get into that. But the crazy thing that happened was that I had applied for another job at another nonprofit. I had been offered the job, and then they rescinded the offer based on what somebody at my current job, not the nonprofit with the cookies, had said about me. And I thought that was really interesting. And of course, in those days, I was just mad, and I wasn't taking action the way I should have. I really should have probably sought legal assistance to deal with the situation, but I didn't have any concrete information. At the end of the day, legally, all a job can say about you is that you were there from this time to this time, and if you're eligible for rehire. If they say anything else, if they give their POV about the type of person that you are, they're out of line, they're out of order, truthfully. And I guess if they say you're not eligible for rehire, then that could be very telling. But literally, legally, that's all they can say about you. Okay, great. So here I am. Fast forward, right? Because we're talking about my 20s now. Fast forward, because we're far away from the 20s. And I want to be a professor. Okay, I had my award-winning marketing agency. I'm doing celebrity events. Some things ran amok in my personal life. I got really sick. Some things with some blood clots. It was not even amazing. Let me just tell you that. And so, I've always loved to teach. And something kept saying to me, teach then, teach. And I said, okay. And so I went and I got a position. Well, I was hoping I was going to get a position, but then they told me something that I was like, Home Alone face. They said to me, well, Stephanie, you need a master's. Dun, dun, dun. Now, years earlier, I had gone back to get my master's just because I wanted it. I didn't need it just because I wanted it. And let me tell you something. When you don't have a why, a real why for something that you're doing, it runs amok. Let me tell you how much it ran amok. It ran amok to the tune of I had 2 classes that quarter. One was a C and one was a D. And I'm like, C's and D's in grad school? That is not what you want. So they put me on academic probation, and I actually stopped going to classes because at that point I knew this wasn't going to get any better. I was not here for the right reasons. I wasn't doing this for the right reasons. Okay, great. So moving on, they say, Stephanie, you're going to need a master's. I said, what? So I go back to my grad program and re-enroll with academic probation, right? I'm on a probationary status, and I'm happy to announce that I came in with a 1.5 GPA. I graduated with a 3.5 GPA. Yay me, go Steph. So they let me be a professor, y'all. And I was so excited. And when I came in the beginning, I thought I had to do all the traditional things like give tests and finals and all this other stuff and quizzes. And once I went back for my second master's, I think even before then, I started to say, this is insane. You know, I want my students to be able to get paid. I could care less about their grades. That was just kind of what I had to do, right? But I wanted them to be able to critically analyze situations. And so if you know anything about education, there's this thing called Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy talks about the levels that you can teach on. At the bottom end of the spectrum is like memorization. At the upper end of the spectrum is like synthesis and critical analysis and all of that. I teach on the higher end of the spectrum, right? I wanted my students to critically analyze, problem solve, all of that, because I knew coming from the entrepreneurial world, coming from the corporate world, that they would need that. Those are skills that get you paid. Knowing what something is does not get you paid. It just is not. So anyway, so here I go professoring and then making drastic changes to my classroom experience. As I went back for my second master's, there were no more finals. There were no more quizzes. We might have done like a quiz, and my quizzes began to be like, marketing starts with an M. And they would say yes. Now, before you say, well, dang, Stephanie, I'm glad my students didn't take your class. Actually, you would have been very excited that your child took my class, or your student, if you will, took my class, because what became of my classes was that we began to write. And they were already writing a fair amount, and I already did my test from scratch. I didn't use Quizlet. And those of you who are educators, stop using Quizlet. All they do is go into the Quizlet bank that somebody has access to, and they get all your tests. That's how that works. I would write my exams from scratch. They had a lot of scenarios where they had to do long answer. Actually, I don't believe I've ever given a multiple choice test. Everything was short answer, true, false, or long answer, long essay, if you will. Okay, so I felt like writing, critical analyses, problem solving, all of those were skills that would get them paid in the real world. So here we go. We're doing our thing. It was rocky in the beginning because, again, I thought I had to do all these things and I didn't really want to. You know, I really didn't want to give tests. I really didn't want to do that. I just didn't see the point. I didn't see the point in memorization. You know, I'm much more about peer-to-peer learning, which most educators who care about educating are. Some people are educators and they don't care if their students learn. They just became a teacher because they couldn't find a job. I'm just going to keep it 100. And the problem with that is that many of them teach like they don't care if the students learn. And so if once they go through that process, by the time I got them in college, they didn't know how to critically analyze. They didn't know how to write. They didn't know how to speak articulately. They didn't know how to do many things because they hadn't had their feet held to the fire because they had some teachers that didn't care at critical times in their academic development. Okay. But shout out to those K through 12 teachers that are really making it happen, because I know it's been a rough couple of years. Sending you all the love. All righty. So then we fast forward again. And I became obsessed with healing. Obsessed. I launched a new coaching practice around it. I got certified in integrative nutrition, meditation, mindfulness. I think that's when I started the flexibility training that I so desperately need to get back to. TRX, a lot of health things, a lot of fitness things. I think I also became a fitness instructor during this time. And what that said to me was that my students needed this. My students needed this. And so I taught a class called Small Business Management, I believe. And I retitled it How to Think Like an Owner. How to think like a business owner. I often say owner instead of business owner because I figure people just know what I'm talking about. So, how to think like an owner. And it included facets of course, the things that were in the textbook, but facets of self care. They got grades for self care. They learned how to meditate. They learned about mindfulness within the confines of productivity, which is why we're going to be launching a new experiment. And for those of you who are interested, you're going to get the details. I'm going to tell you about it. It's about taking 2-minute micro breaks throughout the workday. I think that's really important. And so we're going to launch an experiment about it. But I began to weave that into my classes. Well, I talked about this on one of the videos. I can't remember which one it was. Boundaries at work, maybe? I don't know. I'll figure it out and we'll put it up there. But though I was giving more to the students and trying to equip them, I felt like I was getting the short end of the stick. I really was. And I would look at my evaluations and my evaluation said I was doing the bare minimum. When the truth of the matter is I was not doing the bare minimum. I was doing more than the bare minimum. I was making sure that I had a robust classroom experience. I was actually making sure that my students didn't even have homework. The reason why I believe that my students didn't need homework is because, one, they were adult learners. And so for me, pedagogy is for, I guess, child, teen. Yeah. So K through 12 is about pedagogy, and the way adults learn is andragogy. But unfortunately, they never use that term. So, but for me, the best thing I could do for my adult learners was respect the fact that they have lives outside the classroom. So I reworked every semester, guys. I'm reworking my learning experience. I'm talking to my students. Hey, did this work for you? No. Okay. How could I have done this better? I'm getting the feedback. Yeah, they do an eval, but you know what? I was secure enough in who I was that I would ask for live feedback, and I would tell them if there was something that they didn't feel comfortable telling me, that they could send an anonymous email or whatever. I was open to it. And so, I finally sat back, and in the last couple of years, it took its toll on me mentally. Nobody knew except those who were close to me that I was really mentally drained, really mentally drained. And I couldn't figure out how I could live in covenant with myself. So one of the things that's a big deal about me, right, is I have what I call self-covenants. Hope you're liking this. By now, you might be ready to subscribe because I'm going to do more of this, okay? So there's more stories, more videos, more how-tos, more why, more. Listen, if you're looking for answers, pretty much this is the place to be so you can make decisions and take action. Everyday empowerment, people. It's all about empowerment. All right, so where was I? So I'm mentally drained and I'm questioning if I'm actually adhering to the covenant that I set for myself. So I have covenants with myself, okay? Promises, I say covenant. Some people say promises. There's a whole video on keeping promises to yourself because it's a thing, right? And while it's so easy to not keep the promises to ourselves, one thing just kept coming to me. Celebrated, not tolerated. Celebrated, not tolerated. Celebrated, not tolerated. Stephanie, are you being celebrated or tolerated? Well, the weird thing was it was both. I was being celebrated by my students and a couple of my colleagues. I was being tolerated by my supervisor and the rest of the department. Because unbeknownst to me, when I came into the organization, I came through a program that basically let me skip through the head of the class. I didn't know that. I just came in. And because my mother, who then also had been a college administrator for 4 decades plus, people thought that maybe someone had pulled strings for me. So they had a little bit of angst. Now, this was all told to me later. I didn't know. And my mother was an administrator in an entirely different college, in an entirely different city, and didn't really commune with most of these people. Nevertheless. So I'm like, I'm celebrated in the classroom. I'm tolerated outside of the classroom. And then I had this business and these businesses, and my clients were celebrating me. And I'm getting noticed in national media and yada da yada da yada da. And I was just like, you know what? This is insane. What are you doing? What are you doing, Stephanie? Because I know that over my career, I've been a whole renegade, guys. I have quit jobs. Oh my God, I quit jobs without another job lined up. Ooh, shocking. I actually quit a job and then moved to another city and didn't have a job there. What? Yeah. Yeah. Because, my philosophy became very quickly that you spend too much time at work not to love it. You spend too much time at work not to love what you do. And I saw people that were doing that. They hated their jobs, but it was a good job. So they kept doing it. And I'm like, guys, do you understand the toll that that takes on you? And of course, as I got more into healing and what that feels like and what that looks like, and that it's not some ethereal thing that happens when you die, the more I began to see the connection between mind and body, and the more protective I became of my mental health. So celebrated versus tolerated is how I check in with myself and what I'm doing. Are you being celebrated or tolerated? Are these people celebrating you or tolerating you? And it's not just a professional thing, it's a personal thing too. All right. So, what happened? Well, I tried to minimize the issue by going to a 9-month contract because we had options. We had 10 and a half, we had 9. So I took a pay cut. Again, I took 2 pay cuts. I took a major pay cut when for some reason the full-time faculty members stopped getting overloads. Still don't understand that one. And then I decided to take another pay cut when I went to a 9-month contract. Okay. So now I've messed with my money for good reason, because messing with my money for me, great reason. When you choose you always make the best decision. And then I'm working a 9-month contract, which meant when May came, I was out of there. Like, woo, all right, see y'all in August. And I thought that would help me be able to bring myself, back into balance, because I was getting completely out of balance. Completely. And some of you guys know what I'm talking about, where you're in this job and you're going and you're going and you're going. But I let that job take over my life. I didn't set boundaries. And then when I started to set boundaries, even then, the thing about working with students when you actually care is that, your students will have issues and they will come to you. And they will not be simple little issues, and they will not be issues that can be answered via a syllabus. I'm talking about real life issues. And as a coach, I had included in my syllabus that they could have free coaching with me as long as they were my student. So there you go. Again, going above and beyond, still being tolerated. So the past couple of Mays, I was like, okay, this will work. This last May, class was over. The students did well. And I just was like, this is not going to work. And it's not going to work for a couple of reasons. Beyond the celebrated versus tolerated dichotomy, it's the personal ceiling. There's a ceiling here, because I had no desire to be an administrator. I only wanted to be in the classroom. And so I knew that at that point, all I could do was teach for the next X amount of years and make this amount of money that they give me, and take the focus away from my businesses and serving people that genuinely wanted me to support them. And so I sat back, guys, and I said, you know what? I'm going to plan an exit strategy. And so this would actually be January of 2021. So I had an exit strategy, because what I didn't want, I wasn't sure, I wasn't sure if I was going to leave y'all, but, drop me a comment if you're here, say hello. But I wasn't sure if I was going to leave, but I knew that I needed to have preparation. I was ready to go, but I wasn't necessarily prepared to leave. So that meant I had to really get diligent about some pragmatic and some energetic tasks. Pragmatically, that meant dealing with some credit things. That meant dealing with some, definitely some financial things that had been kind of looming that I wanted to get off of my plate. So I put my energy into that. Energetically, I wanted to make sure that whatever decision that I was taking, that it was in alignment with where I needed to be. And which I kind of knew, but sometimes you need to check yourself, because sometimes you get so excited about doing something that you're not checking yourself. And one of the things that I decided probably about a month or so ago is that I'm learning from love, not from loss. But at that time, I was still learning from loss and lament. So I needed to take a moment and make sure that what I was feeling was good. And then, of course, there's the spiritual aspect. I needed to make sure that was what I was being called to do. I needed to pray about it and meditate on it, and make sure that the steps that I was taking were good steps. So I didn't know, honestly, until probably August 5th that I would not return, that I would not renew my contract. My contract ended on August 16th, and that's the day I resigned. Probably much to the chagrin of my supervisor. However, Texas is an at-will state. I didn't owe them anything. My contract was up. And so I was really trying to can I be honest, guys? I was trying to convince myself to stay another semester for my students. Listen, this is what I told myself, the students, you can do another semester and then leave at Christmas. It'll be easier. And I'm sure, some people said, oh, well, I could have given 2 weeks notice. You don't have to give 2 weeks notice in the state of Texas. That's a courtesy. It's not a requirement. But I wasn't sure right up until the moment before I sent the resignation letter that I had drafted many moons ago. But I was like, wow, are you really about to do this? Are you really about to step away from an 11-year teaching career with your good benefits? I got new benefits, y'all. With your good benefits, with your retirement, with with all the flexibility. But see, I think that's the misnomer, because even though I was teaching maybe twice a week, unlike a K through 12 instructor who has to be there every day, there is no place I want to be every day. Drop me a comment. I see you watching. Hi. So there's still the needs of the students. There's still meetings. There's still challenges that have to be dealt with. And I just felt pulled in so many different directions. But at the end of the day, what kept coming up for me was, you're not being celebrated. You're not being celebrated. You're only being tolerated. You're only being tolerated. Your gifts and your talents are not being celebrated. And I think the day that my supervisor I think what really made me start my exit, I know it sounds like I'm talking like two different things. I started my exit strategy the January before I actually resigned, to give myself the option of resigning. But I wasn't clear. I wasn't sure probably until I would say about August 5th. And I wasn't crystal clear until August 16th. And right before I was sending the resignation letter, my mentor called me. I hadn't told anybody. I hadn't talked to my mom. I hadn't talked to my mentor. I hadn't talked to anybody that would try to give me another perspective. I didn't need another perspective. I just needed to be clear. And sometimes you have to silence the voices, right? Because they get to be a lot. Sometimes you just have to silence the voices. So in January, and maybe even December, it may have been December of 2020, an end of the year conversation, or it may have been January, maybe. Anyway, I'm horrible with the passage of time, but this is what happened. I'm having a conversation about the fact that I had a class that didn't make. As a full-time instructor, the policy used to be that our classes they would be filled first. And then, at least this is what I was told, that our classes would be filled first. A full-time instructor should never have to worry about a class making, whereas an adjunct, they would get what was left over. But that wasn't what was happening in our department. And so I remember vividly the conversation that someone said to me, and I'm not going to use names. I'm just going to say this is what happened. So I was like, well, my class is not making, this is so weird. And what was said to me was students talk. Students talk about what exactly? The fact that they don't have homework, the fact that we meditate in class, the fact that we do our homework together and we have robust conversations. And at this point, we're all virtual. So I'm using breakout rooms and other tools and YouTube and all this other stuff, and trying to be innovative in the classroom. What exactly are they talking about? Oh, well, you get complaints. Every instructor I know gets complaints. And I would get complaints from students that never showed up. So weirdest thing, they never showed up and they never did any work. One student actually accused me of being racist, which was kind of funny because he was Black too. Still don't get that one. But he also didn't come to class. What became the norm in my classes for the last, I guess I would say 4 to 5 years, is that if you showed up and you did the work, that's an A. Because listen, they were showing up, they were doing everything from Socratic method to peer. They were teaching each other, because peer to peer is actually the best way for students to learn. Lecture is the least effective, but people continue to do it because we have a military style educational system. But peer to peer is actually the most fruitful. So they were doing all of these things. They were going out and researching and bringing it back and having breakout sessions. And sometimes I would get really crazy and I would flip the breakout sessions in the middle of them and say, hey, you from this group, share with this group, share with this group, share. So we were doing all of this. And so what I understood at that point in time is because I had had maybe 3 complaints in a semester, this is what this person was crafting their opinion of me on. Fascinating. Because in the 11 years that I had been there, only one person in the entire department had ever observed me teaching. And it wasn't the person I was talking to. And for me, that was really when I began to question even harder. Like if you need a sign, you ever say, oh, I need a sign. That was a sign for me that as I was questioning, are you being tolerated or celebrated, tolerated or celebrated? I knew at that moment I was being tolerated. And I had to get into covenant with myself. And the only way to do that, guys, was for me to say, I got to go. I have to resign. I wrote one of the most beautiful, eloquent, articulate resignation letters ever. I talked to my mentor for 2 hours before I sent it, and then I sent it. And here we are. Here we are in March of 2022, working in my businesses full time. I have my benefits back. Oh, except for my medical, which I'm working on. That's a harder one to do, but we got it worked out. But I have dental, I have vision, yay for benefits. But and I have no intention of going back to a job unless it's a contract and a lucrative one at that. And so I've been able to spend more time with my mom. I've been able to spend more time with friends when I'm not, in the midst of what some people call hermit mode and creating and crafting. And now I get to be here with you guys on YouTube. And one of the reasons why I didn't want a YouTube channel is because I thought it was going to take over my life. And I didn't have capacity at that time. I thought it would be something that I did once upon a time and then didn't do it again because I just didn't have the time. Mentally, I was breaking down. I quit my job for no good reason, for real. Well, somewhat. Based upon what we've been taught, I quit my job for no reason and no good reason at that. I quit my job because I knew that I had a good job and I really did, but I really truly felt like my good job was keeping me from greater works. I was being called to do something greater, to have greater impact. And I couldn't do that being in a classroom. YouTube is my classroom. I have a global classroom. And I think right before I resigned, I did my first TEDx, and which was great, which was meaningful. Behind me, you see my best-selling book, my first one, even though I've written 10. It's been an amazing ride. But what I will say to you out of this story is that you've got to make room. You've got to make room. I'm not telling you to go quit your job, but I am telling you that you need to make room. And if you have to ask a question about anything, celebrated versus tolerated is a great place to start. Because in all things, you, my dear, you and you and you and you, and those of you who are watching this on the replay, and those of you who will watch this later on, watching this on the replay, and those who are watching it live, even though you won't say hi to me, because I can say hi back, you definitely deserve to be celebrated. We all do. And what I don't want to see is people trudging along in a job because it's a good job, but it's keeping you from your greatness. There's a thing, and I'll say this and I'm going to go. I've been obsessed with this thing called zones, the zones of genius and excellence and competence and incompetence. And I heard it first. I've heard zone of genius a long time, but I heard the matrix of the zones first in a book called We Should All Be Millionaires. And Rachel Rodgers is the author of that book, but she is not the creator of this construct. So you'll have to look it up, or either I'll put it in the comments. But I feel like for the longest time, I have been operating in a zone of excellence or somewhere between excellence and genius. And I just want to operate in my zone of genius. I want to impact the world positively. I want to impact people, perspectives, and profits. That's what I want to do. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. And I couldn't do it with the job in tow. A lot of times people will tell you, work your job and your business until your business can support you. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that a lot of times you won't get to that point, because if you have a job, then you might become complacent in your position. If you have a job that's fairly demanding, you won't have capacity to explore anything else. So think it through, my dears. Sometimes the practical is not the best way to go, but in all things, you got to do what's best for you. What am I about to say next? You already know. That's all I have to say about that. So for those of you who absolutely enjoy this video, I know it's a little longer than I planned, but I hope you'll take a listen, and I hope it was meaningful to you nonetheless. Please drop your comments below. I love reading your comments. I read every single one. I reply, I heart, whatever. I want you to know that I'm grateful for you taking the time to spend with me. And who am I? My name is Stephanie D. McKenzie. I'm a speaker, teacher, author, former professor, and coach, here to remind you to always be your own superhero, and to thank you so much for loving, learning, and listening to my story. Thank you for doing all of that with me. See you on the next video.